Okay, so module 2, need for security, and then legal, ethical, and professional issues relating to security or cybersecurity. I'm going to do it in 2 separate presentations. The first one is going to be really focusing on the need for security, and then we'll look at legal, ethical, and professional issues in information security in the next presentation. We want to be able to demonstrate that organizations have business need for information security, and then explain why or understand the successful information security program is the responsibility of an organization's general management and IT management. And then finally, we want to make sure that we understand that threats posed to information security and the more common attacks that are associated with them. We want to also identify or differentiate threats to information systems from attacks against information systems, because it's really 2 different areas that we're looking at. Information security is unlike any other aspect of information technology. It's an arena where the primary mission is to ensure things stay the way they are. If there were no threats to information systems, we could focus on improving systems that support the information, resulting in vast improvements in ease of use and usefulness and functionality. Provides us an overview of the environment in which security must operate and the problems that must be addressed. Information security performs 4 important functions for an organization. It protects the organization's ability to function. It enables the safe operation of applications implemented on the organization's information technology systems, protects the data the organization collects and uses, and safeguards the technology assets in use at the organization. Both general management and IT management are responsible for implementing information technology or information security to protect the ability of the organization to function. Information security is a management issue in addition to a technical issue. It is a people issue in addition to technical issues. So you can see that we're going to require every aspect of management to participate in the arena of information security for a particular organization. To assist management in addressing the need for information security, communities of interest must communicate in terms of business impact and cost of business interruption to avoid arguments expressed only in technical terms. These organizations are under an immense pressure to create and operate integrated, efficient, and capable applications. The modern organization needs to create an environment that safeguards applications using organizations' information technology systems, particularly the environment of the organization's infrastructure. Once the infrastructure is in place, management must understand it has not abdicated to the IT department its responsibilities to make choices and enforce decisions, but must continue to oversee the infrastructure. Many organizations realize that one of their most valuable assets is their data, because without data, an organization loses its record of transactions and its ability to deliver value to the customer. Protecting data in motion and data at rest are both critical aspects of information security. In effect, the information security program is essential to the protection of the integrity and the value of the organization's data. To perform effectively, organizations must add secure infrastructure services based on the size and scope of their enterprise. When an organization grows and more capabilities are needed, additional security services may have to be provided locally. Likewise, as an organization network grows to accommodate changing needs, more robust technology solutions may be needed to replace security programs the organization has outgrown. So if we look at the most recent CSI FBI survey, we still find some alarming things as it relates to security incidences. The majority of organizations that participate still report that they had at least one malware infection during the previous year. just mind-boggling to believe that an organization could still fall victim to it, but that is the case. And then about 15% indicate that their system were penetrated by an outsider. And if you get the opportunity to look at it, you'll find that there's some really alarming statistics that are revealed in each year of the survey. So if we look at a typical type of breach or typical threat to an organization, we can look at the compromise of intellectual property. And many organizations create and support the development of intellectual property as part of their business operations. Intellectual property for an organization includes things like trade secrets, copyrights, trademarks, and patents. Once intellectual property has been defined and properly identified, breaches to intellectual property constitute a threat to the security of the information. Most common intellectual property breaches involve unlawful use or duplication of software-based intellectual property. This is known as software piracy. In addition to laws surrounding software piracy, two watchdog organizations investigate allegations of software abuse. That's the Software Information Industry Association, which was formerly the Software Publishers Association, and then the Business Software Alliance. And there's a bunch of other ones depending on the industry that are out there. Enforcement of copyright violations, piracy, and the like has been attempted through a number of technical security measures, including digital watermarks and embedded code. Software attacks occur when an individual or a group designs software to attack an unsuspecting system. Most of this software is referred to as malicious code or malicious software. Sometimes I refer to it as malware. These software components or programs are designed to damage, destroy, or deny service to the target system. Some of the more common instances of malicious code are viruses and worms, Trojan horses, logic bombs, backdoors, and denial of service. A little bit of debate around logic bomb, whether it can actually be considered a malicious software or not, but it's something that we can explore later. Computer viruses are segments of code that perform malicious actions. This code behaves very much like the virus pathogen attacking animals and plants using the cell's own replication machinery to propagate and attack. The code attaches itself to existing programs, takes control of that program's access to the targeted computer. The virus-controlled target program then carries out the virus's plan by replicating itself to additional targeted systems. If we look at a macro virus, it could be embedded in the automatically executing macro codes common in office product software like word processors, spreadsheets, and databases. A boot virus infects the key operating systems files located in the computer's boot sector, and then worms are malicious programs that replicate themselves constantly without requiring any human interaction. So there's a bunch of different categories that we can look at. Pretty straightforward as far as what they can and can't do. These are just general classifications, and then a particular string of code will fit under one or the other. A Trojan horse is a software program that purports to be something other than what it is. Usually it has arrives as an email or a software, maybe a free game, and then embedded in that free game is some malicious code. Logic bombs are strings of code that are inserted into a system that are activated after the absence or the execution of a certain thing. For instance, probably the most well-known one is the Valentine's Day logic bomb, where it was triggered on a certain date. Say I was a malicious insider and I knew I was about to be fired, so I'll write a logic bomb that says that after if I don't log in after 3 consecutive days, then execute the code, and maybe it wipes a drive or something like that. Backdoors and trapdoors are pieces of code that are inserted into software, usually during the program and development phase, to allow the developer a means to gain access to the software for fixes and patches, and then they're not removed, and then they can be exploited. Polymorphic threats are threats that can change the way they look. Right after detection, they have the ability to change. It uses encryption to make itself look a little bit different to avoid antivirus software. And then virus and worm hoaxes are those things that you see that come out that says MSNBC discovered a new threat. And it's just a bogus story to try to trick people into doing something that they probably. If we look at remediation and quality of service by service providers, this category really represents situations in which a product or service are not delivered to the organization as expected. The organization's information system depends on the successful operation of many interdependent systems, including things like power grids, telecom networks, parts suppliers, service vendors, and even things like the janitorial staff and the garbage haulers. Internet service, communication, power irregularities are three sets of service issues that dramatically affect the availability of information and systems. If we look at internet service issues for organizations that rely heavily on the internet and the web to support continued operations, the threat of the potential loss of internet service can lead to considerable loss in the availability of information. Many organizations have sales staffs and telecommuters that work at remote locations, and when an organization places its web services in the care of a web hosting provider, that outsourcer assumes responsibility for all internet services as well as the hardware and operating systems used to operate the website. Communication and other service provider issues, other utility services can impact the organization as well. Among these, obviously, telephone, water waste, trash pickup, cable television, fuel deliveries, and custodial services. The threat of loss of these services can really lead to the inability of an organization to function properly. Simply looking at power irregularities, the threat of irregularities from power utilities is common. Can lead to fluctuations such as power excess, power shortages, and power losses. In the U.S., buildings are fed 120 volt, 60 cycle power, usually through 15 and 20 amp cycles. Voltage can spike, right, which is a momentary increase or surge. A sag is a momentary low voltage or a brownout, and then faults or blackouts or momentary losses of power. Sensitive equipment, especially networking equipment, computer-based systems are susceptible to fluctuation. Controls should be applied to manage power quality. And then we look at deliberate acts of espionage. This threat represents a well-known and broad category of electronic and human activities that breach the confidentiality of information. When an unauthorized individual gains access to the information and an organization is trying to protect, the act is categorized as a deliberate act of espionage or trespass. When information gatherers employ techniques that cross the threshold of what's legal and or ethical, they enter the world of corporate espionage or industrial espionage. Things like shoulder surfing occur at computer terminals, desks, ATMs, ATM machines, public phones, and other places where a person is accessing confidential information. The threat of trespass can lead to unauthorized real or virtual actions that enable information gatherers to enter premises or systems that they have not been authorized to enter. Controls are sometimes implemented to mark the boundaries of an organization's virtual territory. These boundaries give notice to trespassers that they are encroaching on an organization's cyberspace. The classic perpetrator of deliberate acts of espionage or trespass is the hacker. In actuality, hackers use skill or fraud to attempt to bypass controls around information that is the property of someone else's. They will spend numerous hours examining the types of software and hardware that an organization is running in order to make an informed decision. Well, hacker profile, I think this is an interesting picture here. Traditionally, if you ask around, people believe that the individual, typical hacker is someplace between 13 and 18, male with limited parental supervision, spends a lot of time on this computer. But in reality, they can be anywhere between 12 and 60, male or female, don't know much about their background, varying degrees of technical skills, and could be internal or external to the organization. If we look at the skill levels among hackers, the first is the expert hacker who develops software scripts and codes and exploits used by secondary hackers, or the novice or unskilled hacker. Expert hackers are usually masters of several programming languages. They understand network protocols, operating systems exhibit a mastery of the technical environment of the chosen targeted system. However, expert hackers have now become, we can say, bored with directly attacking systems and have turned to writing software. The software they're writing are automated exploits that allow novice hackers to become what's referred to as a script kiddie. Hackers of limited skill who use expert written software to exploit a system, but they don't fully understand or appreciate the systems they hack. As a result of preparation and continued vigilance, attacks conducted by scripts are usually predicted and can be adequately defended against. There are some other terms for system rule breakers. The term cracker is now commonly associated with individuals who crack or remove software protection from an application designed to prevent unauthorized duplication. And then an older term is a phreaker, which is an individual who hacks public telephone networks to make free calls, disrupt services, and generally just wreak havoc. If we look at forces of nature or acts of the most dangerous threats because they are unexpected and can occur with little warning. These threats can disrupt not only the lives of individuals, but also storage, transmission, and the use of information. These things include fire, flood, earthquake, lightning, landslide, mudslide, tornado, windstorms, hurricanes, typhoons, tsunamis, electrostatic discharge, dust, contamination. Since it's not possible to avoid a lot of these threats, management must implement controls to limit damage and also plan and prepare contingency plans for continued operation. Looking at human error and failure, and I know that this has cropped up in some discussion module, this category includes possible acts performed without intent or malicious purpose by an individual who is an employee of an organization. Inexperience or improper training, make the incorrect assumptions, or other circumstances can cause problems. Employees constitute obviously one of the greatest threats to information security as the individual closest to the organization's data. Employee mistakes can easily lead to revealing classified data, entering erroneous data, accidental deletion or modification, storage of deleted and of data in unprotected areas, failure to protect information adequately. Many of these threats can be controlled, ranging from simple procedures such as requiring the user to type a critical command twice, to more complex procedures such as verification of commands by a second party. Information extortion, the possibility of an attacker or formerly trusted insider stealing some information from a computer and demanding some sort of compensation for its return or for an agreement not to disclose the information. You see this a lot in common with credit card numbers, but it also can be any really customer information that can be stolen. Missing and inadequate or incomplete organizational policy or planning makes an organization vulnerable to loss, damage, and disclosure of information assets when other threats lead to attacks. Information security at its core is a management function. And what we want to make sure is that security safeguards and information asset protection controls that are missing, misconfigured, antiquated, or poorly designed or managed put an organization in a position to be compromised. So it's the information security manager's job to make an organization less likely to suffer losses and other attacks through the constant management of these policies, procedures, and applications. Equally popular is an assault on the electronic face of the organization or its website. Category of threat involves the deliberate sabotage of a computer system or business, acts of vandalism to either destroy an asset or damage the image of an organization. Threats can range from petty vandalism by employees to organized sabotage against an organization. Organizations frequently rely on images to support their generation of revenue. So if an organization's website's defaced, we can expect a drop in consumer confidence and reducing the organization's sale and net worth. Compared to website defacement, vandalism within a network is more malicious in intent and less public because it's from a trusted insider. Today, security experts notice a rise in other forms of online vandalism in what is described as hacktivism or cyber activism operations, which is really a more extreme version, or perhaps a more extreme version could be referred to as cyber terrorism. is the illegal act of taking another person's or another's property. Within an organization, that property can be physical, electronic, or intellectual. The value of information suffers when it's copied and taken away without the owner's knowledge. Physical theft can be controlled quite easily. You know, there are a wide variety of measures that can be used to simply lock doors, train security personnel, and the installation of alarm systems. But electronic theft is a far more complex problem to manage and control. And that's largely in part because an organization may not even know that the actual theft of electronic information has even occurred. Looking at technical hardware failures or errors when a manufacturer distributes a user's equipment containing an unknown or known flaw, these defects can cause the system to perform outside of expected parameters, resulting in some unreliable or poor service or lack of availability. Some errors are terminal in that they result in the unrecoverable loss of equipment. Some errors are intermittent in that they only periodically manifest themselves, resulting in faults that are not easily repeatable. The category of threats comes from purchasing software with unknown or hidden faults. Large quantities of computer code are written, debugged, published, and sold only to determine that not all the bugs were resolved. Sometimes unique combinations of certain software and hardware will reveal new bugs. Sometimes the items aren't errors but are purposeful shortcuts left by programmers or dishonest employees for a reason. And then, you know, when we look at the infrastructure that is in organization, one of the areas that is of biggest concern is it becomes antiquated or outdated, and it leads to unreliability and untrustworthy systems. Management must recognize that when technology becomes outdated, there is a risk of loss of data integrity to threats and attacks. Ideally, proper planning by management should prevent the risk from technological obsolescence. But when it is identified, management must take immediate actions. An attack is a deliberate act that exploits a vulnerability. It's accomplished by what's referred to as a threat agent or a threat agent to damage or steal an organization's information or physical assets. An exploit is a technical or is a technique to compromise a system. Vulnerability is an identified weakness of a controlled system whose controls are not present or no longer effective, and an attack is then used. An attack is then the use of an exploit to achieve the compromise of a controlled system. We mentioned malicious code. This kind of attack includes the execution of worms and viruses and Trojan horses with the intent to destroy or steal information. I mentioned earlier about backdoors, and this is using a known or previously unknown and newly discovered access mechanism where the attacker has the ability to gain access to a system or network resource. Password cracks are attempting to reverse calculate passwords. Brute force cryptographic attack is the application of computing and network resources to try every possible combination of options for a password. And then the other type is a dictionary attack, where the dictionary password attack narrows the field by selecting specific accounts to attack and then uses a list of commonly used passwords, i.e. the dictionary, to guess with. Denial of service is a type of attack that the attacker sends a large number of connections or information requests to a target. So many requests are made that the target system cannot handle them successfully, along with all the other legitimate traffic. So legitimate requests for services are denied because the system crashes or is merely has an inability to perform its ordinary functions. And then the distributed denial service is a coordinated stream of requests launched against a target from many locations at the same time. We look at spoofing. This technique is used to gain unauthorized access to computers, where the intruder sends messages to a computer with an IP address indicating the message is coming from a trusted host. A couple of different types of attacks. Man in the middle. In the man in the middle attack, or TCP hijacking attack, an attacker sniffs packets from a network, modifies them, and then inserts them back into the network. Spam is obviously unsolicited email. It's largely a nuisance, but it can be a delivery mechanism for some types of attacks. And then mail bombing is another form of a denial of service attack. in which the attacker routes large quantities of email to the specific target. Looking at this application or this tool is referred to as a sniffer. I mentioned it before. It's a program or a device that can monitor data traveling over a network. It does have a legitimate use. Network administrators use it all the time to manage network functions, but it can also be used for stealing information on a network. Phishing attacks are attempts to gain personal or financial information by posing as a legitimate source or a legitimate entity. And then farming is the redirection of legitimate web traffic to an illegitimate site for the purposes of obtaining that same private information. And I mentioned this term called social engineering, and it's really within the context of information security, the process of using social skills to convince people to reveal their credentials or other valuable information to the attacker. It really does play on the fact that people are the weakest link, and all the other things that we do technologically are rendered meaningless if we can trick an individual to giving us the access that we need. Timing attacks are relatively new. They work by exploiting the contents of web browsers cache. This allows the designer to collect information to access password protected sites. Another attack by the same name involves attempting to intercept cryptographic elements to determine what the keys and the encryption algorithms are that are being used. In summary, like any other aspect of information technology, information security's primary mission is to ensure things stay the way they are. They perform 4 important functions: protect the organization's ability to function, enable safe operation of applications implemented on an organization's information technology systems, protect data that the organization collects, safeguard the technology assets that it uses, and then we want to make sure we understand what a threat is. It's an object or a person or another entity representing a constant danger to the asset. An attack is a deliberate attack that exploits vulnerabilities. Secure systems require secure software. Thank you very much.